Welcome to Wrestling with Success, the best and only podcast for the wrestlers of tomorrow. Please welcome your host, Nigel? Oh, right. Your host and future champion, Neil McMillan.
So, guys and girls and wrestling fans worldwide, welcome to episode 13 of the Wrestling with Success podcast. The unlucky 13, the episode where it can all go wrong. But, lucky for you and I have one hell of a talent on the show today. This guy is one to keep an eye on. This guy's one good-looking chap. He has a lot of promise and one hell of a future. He is Mr. Style over Substance. Ladies and gentlemen, I give to you the Romford rock and roller, Mr. Danny Rowe. Danny, how are you?
Mate, that intro, that was superb. I wasn't expecting that. That was very kind. I feel like I've got a lot to live up to now, but happy with that. Can't complain with that.
I've built you up. You need to keep with it now. You need to keep with it.
Yeah, no, pressure's on.
So, Danny, first of all, thanks for taking the time to come on the show. I appreciate it, especially as you're a father, the same way I am. You had to empty the dishwasher just before we started. I needed to put a shift in with the little boy as well. So, I appreciate your time.
Yeah, I know. She's like I said, she's having a bath at the moment, but at any point we could be rudely interrupted. But hopefully, fingers crossed, I won't have to super kick her out of the room or anything. But we should be good to go.
So you do that to your kids too? I thought it was the
I
only
do,
one.
yeah. My missus is always having a go at me. I always do the for my sins the leg slap. I never actually make any contact, but she doesn't understand why I slap the leg. So rather than actually be mad at the fact that I'm kind of kicking out, she's like, I don't understand all this leg slapping, and then she starts doing it, and it's like, yeah, but you know. Well,
I just tend to stick with the last ride. Last ride on the mattress. On the mattress. The kids love it. If child services are listening, this is all. I'm joking. I'm not.
There's no contact. Non-contact.
Yeah, exactly. It's all safe. We're professionals. Can you give the listeners a brief rundown of your wrestling resume so far?
It's pretty brief in fairness. So it's probably about 2 weeks to the year. So I think I started training at Dropkicks. I'm going to say around the 21st. So my daughter was born on the 16th of September. So I actually had my first lesson at Dropkicks whilst I was on paternity leave, because obviously in between changing nappies and getting up 16 times during the night, I thought, well, now's as good a time as any to to kind of give it a go. Obviously, fast forward for a year, I've now made my professional debut, semi-professional debut, however you want to call it. So I've probably wrestled 6 times. I'm trying to think of a debut at Langdon. Wrestled for EAW twice. Wrestled Gravesend, Brentwood. So and recently, where were we recently? Langdon again. So probably about 6 matches overall. So still very green, very very new to it all. Still learning the ropes. But I think the difference between where I was this time last year, starting first ever session, to now, I think I've come quite a long way. There's still a very long way to go, but I think that I think the difference is slowly but surely picking it up, and we're getting there.
Oh, good. I mean, you and I are quite similar in the fact that we're both relatively the similar age. How old are you, Danny?
29. So 29. Got one more
year.
You're
going to meet Danny.
I get that a lot, you know. I think I'm quite, because I've got a baby face. A lot of people think I'm a lot younger than I am. I think my good buddy and fellow bromancer Mitch Davis, when we first joined, thought that I was the kid, and as it turns out, I'm like 2 or 3 years older than him. So it's always quite interesting whenever we're together, and he's 6'5", rather big years, and I'm pretty much a midget. But I'm actually I think bar maybe Ian and maybe one or 2 others. I actually think I'm one of the oldest at the school.
Oh wow, I didn't realise that at all. Well, I mean,
yeah.
So
a late bloomer, late starter.
I mean, I'm 29 in a week and a half, so I mean, I'm right there with you. So I mean, we're both the kind of similar age. We both have kids, and then both decided to say fuck it, sod everyone else. I want to pursue my dream, and I want to become a wrestler. I mean, what was it that sparked that decision for you so late on?
So I only followed through with it within the last year, but I actually had inquired or looked into becoming a wrestler or starting the training when I was about 14, and with dropkicks. So it's kind of all come full circle. So I remember these were back in the days where MSN was a big deal.
Good old MSN.
I think I must have got John Ritchie, who was the head trainer at the time. He must have been from the website, but I added him on LinkedIn, not LinkedIn, MSN. Had a few conversations with him initially, kind of sounded it out. But I think in the end it just boiled down to the fact that I lived in Gideon Park at the time. So I mean, Perfect wasn't a million miles away, but just in terms of actually getting there and getting back, it was always going to be quite difficult to commit to. I don't think they ran Wednesdays at the time, which obviously could have been a solution. But fast forward, essentially this is where I'm going to get a bit kind of soppy with you now. Actually, what kind of kick-started it was when I found out that the missus was pregnant, and we were having a little girl. I actually remember when I finalised it, we just bought our house in Leyden. We were in the process of kind of decorating and starting to paint, and I remember we went to lunch at I think it was like a TGI Fridays perhaps, just sat down, and I think this is about the time that actually I feel like saying that I kind of came out to my girlfriend. I think that I'd never really, she knew that I was interested in wrestling, but I don't quite think she realised how deep it went or how long that I'd actually been a fan for. And I think this is around the time that the Cruiserweight Classic was on. And that for me was actually, it was the Brian Kendrick story.
Okay.
So in real life, he'd had his run with WWE when he was younger and maybe a bit more immature and reckless, and kind of missed his opportunity. And his story was a real one. He was being brought back. He's I think in his 40s now, and he was like, this is my last shot. And I don't know, something about that kind of resonated with me, that I thought, along with expecting to be a father for the first time, I just think that I wanted my little girl, when she's older, if she had an interest in kind of horse riding, dancing, singing, whatever it may be, acting, I would like to think that I would, that she would feel comfortable enough to pursue that dream. And I certainly wouldn't want to kind of get in her way. I want her to grow up believing that if she has a goal, she wants to do something with her life, that will support her and go through it all, the whole way. At the same time, I felt like, how can I take that stance and not actually have done that myself? I felt like I'd be a bit of a hypocrite. And so, I thought with all of that combined, I thought, look, I know of drop kicks. I'll go on that Wednesday. If it's not for me, I bang my head, get dropped on my neck, or get punched in the face, and I decide, no, this isn't for me. At the very least, I can come away saying, look, I gave it a go, and there's no shame in giving it a go. And as it turns out, I stuck with it. I think I was quite lucky that the second session I went to was a ring session as well, and that also was a show in Bolton. So we're actually coming up to, I suppose, the Bolton show this month could actually be the anniversary officially. That was the first show that I ever saw. I remember Aidan, or Taylor Essex, was up against Ollie Peace in the opener. Can't remember too much about the rest of the card, but from that point on, I thought this is something that I can definitely see myself doing. So I've stuck with it, and lo and behold, here we are today, six matches in.
Oh wow. No, it's good, man. It's scary how kind of similar our stories are, and the fact it's funny how you said came out to your other half. I mean, my other half, I kind of slowly introduced her to the fact that I was a wrestling fan.
Yeah, you got to test the waters occasionally.
Yeah, it's nothing you come out and go, oh hi, by the way, nice to meet you. I'm a huge wrestling fan. Will you date me? It's never going to work. You don't never start off with like that. So I kind of slowly introduced her.
I mean, even growing up, I think I said this to you earlier. Like I was very much, kind of in the closet with regards to being a wrestling fan. It's not something that, because unfortunately, whether it's true or not, kind of, I think there is a bit of a stigma around, wrestling fans, kind of having neck beards and being overweight virgins living in their parents' houses and whatnot. That's a general, stereotype. And I think it went through a bit of a boom period. I remember being in, secondary school, maybe year 8, year 9, when Undertaker was doing his whole American badass kind of gimmick, and he had Limp Bizkit as his music, and Limp Bizkit were quite big at the time, so maybe kind of circa 2000, 2001, and it had a bit of a buzz. I remember at the school that I went to, kind of people knew who Stone Cold were and The Rock, and the general kind of Attitude Era guys, and it was cool to like wrestling. And I just never got out of that. Like even when it was then deemed uncool again, I still found it incredibly cool. And it was one of those things that if it kind of switched. At the school that I went to, it was I went to an all-boys school as well in Essex, so the cool thing was to be into like your garage music and kind of bloody Oxide and Neutrino and So Solid Crew, busting out names that probably half of the young guys drop kicks have never heard of.
Scary, isn't it?
I know. Whereas I was into kind of like the Limp Bizkits, the Blink-182s, and the wrestling, so I kind of almost had to repress that somewhat and make out that I liked So Solid Crew and Oxide Neutrino wasn't involved in wrestling. So, like you said, it's something that I think you kind of keep. It was almost like a guilty pleasure, I suppose. And looking back, I feel guilty feeling that way about it. I think you should kind of own it if you like wrestling, whatever you like, just own it. It's part of you. It's part of who I am. So, but I think it's taken me to this point, where I think. Having a kid, and then I think as you can probably vouch for as well, when you have a kid, a lot of things get put into perspective, and you realise kind of what's important and what's worth worrying about and what isn't. And I think I got to that point where I'm like, I don't care, if people think I'm a nerd for liking wrestling, or they can laugh all they want. Like, it's something that I like. I've tried weaning myself off it. Doesn't happen. I always end up coming back or finding a reason to watch again. So. Started out, I'm just going to own it now. It's part of who I am. And in fairness, it's actually surprising. Like now that people know that I do wrestling and I watch it, it's quite funny how I don't know if you find it the same. How many people, secretly are clearly fans themselves, but they're not. So, but is that what's his name? He's John Cena still, or Big Show still there? Is Triple H still doing it? The Rock. And I had someone quite recently throw out a name that, it's like, I can't remember who it was now, but someone threw out a name, and it wasn't a John Cena, it wasn't a Hulk Hogan, it was the type of name that you feel like, if you know who that is, you definitely watch it more than you're letting on. I can't remember what the name was now, but I think a lot of people were fans of it, but a lot of people just aren't willing to actually admit that they're fans. I don't know why, but it's just the way the world is.
Great. And I think everyone thinks it's quite cool in a way that they can kind of speak to someone, and there's a lot of people who are intrigued by like wrestling, and as soon as they find out, they ask you loads of questions, like load of really like cliche questions about like who wins and stuff like that, and is it all predetermined? But they have an interest, they show an interest there. And the main thing I found was when I kind of had my coming out of being wrestling and just owned it, was that a lot of people, I try to use it in a sense of maybe not just for wrestling, but whatever your interest or hobby is, you should just embrace where it is. If you're making jumpers out of horsehair, that's not going to interest me. But if you fucking own it and you're just like taking full control out of it, you're going to get my respect. And I try to encourage everyone around me, family and friends, that anything that they want to do, just fucking do it and embrace it. Because
unless you're making voodoo dolls from people's fingernail clippings and hair, maybe not so much respect for that. But no, I get what you mean. Whatever it is, if it's if it's dance, if it's wrestling, if it's, it could be a number of things, singing, just at the end of the day, just be you. It does I think you find yourself a little bit more the older you get, but I think that's one thing that I really want to kind of get out of this wrestling, or if I can, convince anyone, whether it be friends, family, just even neutrals, just to actually kind of like you say, just embrace who you are. You know, if you're interested in something, don't hide it from the world. Like you might get a bit of stick, but at the end of the day, who cares? if it's something you're into and you dig, you know, go for it. It's yours. Own it.
Yeah. No. Good. You're on the same wavelength there, Danny. Right. So where did you start your training? Did you start at Dropkicks then, or?
Yeah. So first session I went to was. So I'll be honest with you. My first ever session, I came away thinking, oh, I'm not quite sure about this, because I came on a Wednesday. Obviously, it was in the judo hall, and the first thing I noticed was it wasn't at that particular session. It wasn't particularly busy, and there were quite a lot of kids. So I didn't know what to expect. I suppose that I thought that there was perhaps kind of had to be 16 and over. Like, I didn't quite know how flexible they were. And when I turned up, I remember Vinny, Vincredible, Mr. Vincredible. He was the first person I saw in the car park. I think Kevin Hanley was there. Sam Dufresne, I think, was there as well. I think maybe even Joshua James may have been there. But I think that was pretty much it. And then everyone else was kids. And I think halfway through the session, Lucas busted out a sponge football, and we had like a penalty shootout in the middle of the judo hall, and I was thinking, what is going on here? And like I said, luckily the next session was a ring session. There was a bigger turnout because there was a show, and that's when I met the likes of Aidan Taylor Essex for the first time. I think Jack Sheffield came, just a few more of the guys that are actually on the shows, I mean, obviously since then I've dabbled, or had a few, kind of sessions elsewhere. There was a brief period where Mitch Davis, the Wolf Mitch Davis, had introduced me to his good friend in the business, Phil Powers. We had a couple of, one-on-one sessions at the old Stan's gym, just really going through some basic chain. And, we only had a couple of sessions just because our availabilities didn't always match up, and it obviously wasn't kind of set in stone that he was going to start a school again. But I remember coming away learning a lot with regards to just certain bits and bobs with chain, and that's when I learned that if you're going to throw a clothesline and it's up to the other person to duck it if that's what they're supposed to do, and swing it, and if they don't duck, well, that's kind of on them, not you. Little things I still remembered. I've had some additional training with WrestleForce, Ollie Peace. It's always good for to learn some of the kind of flashier sequences and about ring positioning. I think that with regards to training, it's always worth training at as many different places as possible. I mean, obviously we had that guest seminar yesterday at Dropkicks with Jules Malone, and she said pretty much the same thing. Train as many places as you can, because somebody, for instance, may excel at the character side of the business and the showmanship, but might not be as strong on the chain, and then someone else, their specialism may be chain, someone else might specialise in lucha, so on and so forth. So it's always worth doing that. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of my training to date. I don't think I've missed anyone else out, on top of, obviously we've had some guest trainers over the years as well, over the year, with Dropkicks, which some have been better than others.
What are some of the people who have done some of the sessions for you, and what were some of the best ones and some of the worst?
So I can't remember what the first one is. I'm going to say the first one actually was World of Sport legend Mal Saunders? Should really know that. Sorry if you're listening, Mal. I doubt you, but that was my first guest seminar, and I mean that was wicked. That was it was, I love learning from people like that have, they don't just talk the talk, but they've walked the walk. I mean, he's worked the likes of William Regal, kind of Johnny Sane, Fit Finlay. I mean, you kind of name all the World of Sport guys. He was around in that era, so obviously his style was very kind of British influence. It was, a lot of chain, a lot of mat-based stuff. And it's quite, I remember coming away from that session thinking that whilst the the wrestling business itself has evolved, and obviously people are doing things now that you wouldn't have dreamed of seeing back in the old World of Sport days. But in terms of the psychology, there's a lot to be. There's a lot that you can still take from the old World of Sport days that you can apply today, and people do still apply. So little things like people, I feel still to this day, if they're doing the lock up, they transition into a wrist lock or something, are very quick to try and get out of that and move on to the next sequence, where he part of what he was trying to teach us is it's you can make a match longer and tell more of a story by just being in that wrist lock, and the guy who's in it tries to get out a couple of times but fails ultimately before he does, and the end sequence should be the big payoff. You've already killed kind of 2, 3, maybe even up to 5 minutes just doing that one thing. And I think that just in terms of pacing, took a lot from that session. So I mean, that was wicked. That was probably my favourite guest seminar we've had up until now that I've been part of. And then probably the worst, I'm going to put him on blast because again I doubt he's listening, but by far the worst we had, and I'm sure that I will not be alone in saying this, was we had Adam Rose come down for a guest session. That was just a shambles. I mean, the guy turned up off his nut on I've been smoking, the wacky backy or whatnot. Was just out of it. In fairness, maybe he thought that we had a ring, and again there were quite a lot of kids there, so maybe he didn't want to delve into anything too advanced. But I mean, when I say he did the basics, we maybe did a couple of lockups. We spent about half an hour doing a pin drill of just pin and kicking out. I remember he tried to demonstrate how to do a forward roll and then fell on his arse. It was just a shambles. But you can't win them all, I guess. And
so he was living up to his gimmick then, the party boy gimmick.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, it actually would have been better if he would have come in his full Adam Rose get-up. I'd have probably popped if he'd come through the door to his entrance music with a guy in a bunny costume behind him. Yeah. But the way it actually was, it was not sad, because I mean, I'm sure he's not bothered. He's probably earned his money. He's probably doing it all right for himself. But yeah, I mean, I think the reality didn't quite live up to the expectation on that one, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
The funny thing about that, I just remembered that a lot of the stories and anecdotes he was telling seemed to, about life in the WWE, seemed to result in you getting punched in the face. It was kind of like, I don't know if you've ever seen the episode of South Park where they go skiing and the instructor's like, if you don't do this, you're going to have a bad time, or if you pizza before you chip, you're going to have a bad. Everything was like, you're going to have a bad time. He was telling these stories about WWE, and it's like, if you do this, you're going to get a punch in the face. And make sure that when this happens, blah, 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 because if you do that in WWE and you're out there and you're on TV, you're going to get a punch in the face. And it's like, right, so it seems like you're more likely to get punched in the face for real at WWE than anything else. But yeah, so it was worth it for that, in fairness, just for that alone, of hearing about how the many different ways you're going to get punched in the face at WWE for real.
I missed out on that one then. So, what are the main things that you struggled with when learning and training, and maybe you still may be struggling with now? Where do you think your kind of your weaknesses are at the moment, or where you think you yourself could improve?
How long you got? To begin with, and even now, I think the two biggest weaknesses that I have are remembering everything. So obviously I'm not at the level where I'm not even close to being able to go out and just calling it in the ring. I don't think anyone at Dropkicks will mind me saying that there's few, if any, that are actually at that level where they can, maybe some of the more experienced guys can go out and just call it on the fly. But when I wrestle, and even during showcases, you find that people want to kind of know or have a script to kind of work to, and just remembering on top of the techniques on how to do everything properly and how to bump and when to sell and when to show out to the crowd. These are all things that, there's so much to remember and take into consideration, that it's still something that I struggle with now, but even more so when I first started, just remembering really basic stuff. I think my first ever showcase, my first session was against Kevin Hanley, and obviously there was only so much that we could do because it was my first session. I don't even think I'd taken a bump on the gym mats yet, maybe the crash mats. So there was only so much that we could actually do, and I remember getting about halfway through and just completely forgetting. My mind went blank. And now that's still, I've been all right so far in the matches that I've had where I've not been in a position where I've completely drawn a blank, but it's happened in training. I remember working Taylor Essex Aiden once in a ring session at Bolton, and I actually forgot my own comeback, and my comeback was supposed to come after he did the kind of like CM Punk knee in the corner when I'm in the turnbuckle. So he whipped me in the first time, did it, and then after the second time I was supposed to make my comeback. So he hit it a second time and then went comeback, but I forgot what my comeback was. So he whipped me into the corner again, did the same move, was like comeback. I'm like, yeah, but I don't know what it is. So I think he ended up hitting the CM Punk knee on me about 4 times, and then he was like, move on to something else. I was like, no, I remember it now. And then we ended up doing it, but it still happens now. And I know that's quite a common problem for people just starting out, but I think just confidence is the other one as well. Despite what people, the impression they may get of me, I think just it hasn't always been that way. I think when I was actually younger, it's really weird. When I was kind of under the age of 10, we used to go on holiday to these places with kids clubs, and if they were ever doing like a kids club, plays or getting people on stage, I was always first one up there, wanted the biggest role, and then like literally just overnight, just really went into my shell. Didn't like getting up on stage, didn't like talking in front of people or anything like that. So even doing the showcases, I think now I've been on a couple of shows. It doesn't really faze me, but even right up until before I'd made my debut, I used to be bricking it, even doing showcases in front of kind of 10 people. So confidence is another one, and I think that comes with actually feeling confident in the knowledge that you know what you're doing to a degree. Yeah. So as long as you feel comfortable and confident that you're not going to go out and make a complete show of yourself, when I got a lot more confident when I started to get better at just doing certain moves, or actually remembering sequences, or knowing that my technique was right at the very least. So even if the match was horrible and it got no crowd reaction, I would know at least I've technically everything looked good. And I think now in terms of weaknesses, is just remembering to get the crowd invested. So showing out after hitting a big move rather than just moving on to the next sequence. I think as we were told yesterday, you've got to give people a reason to care. I think Lewis Mayhew pointed it out when he was on your show as well, that when he does the camps or kind of the fairs, that he'll pick one person to connect with. And last night that Jules Malone said pretty much the same thing, but she said if the crowd are surrounding the ring, so you've got people on all 4 sides, pick one person per side, whether you're a heel or a face. If you're a heel, give one person in particular a load of shit, so then they boo you. Same time, if you're a face, pick one person, get them invested. And I think just remembering to do that, because that's, at the end of the day, it's not just about, hitting moves and wrestling, really, is it? It's a show at the end of the day. You've got to have that showmanship. And that's where some people, I think, over the years have, maybe not progressed on to bigger and better things when they're on the biggest stage of WWE. Like some really great wrestlers haven't pushed on because they don't have that showmanship, or they don't get people invested. So I think just remembering, to get the crowd involved is something that I'm trying to work on. And again, that comes with knowing your character and actually having, things about your character that make you unique, whether that be a pose or a catchphrase or a look, something that separates you so that the crowd remember you. Other than that, there's plenty more, but I think they're the 2 main things, just kind of remembering things and general confidence, I think. But again, that'll all come with time and experience, I hope.
Well, like you said about having there's so much to think about when it's not just a case of you've got to try to remember what you've got, what sequences you've got to try to remember it to make it look good. You've got to try to remember to show out to the crowd. You've got to try to remember all these, and in your head, you could be doing a slow move or anything like that. But I mean, you could probably vouch as well. In your head is so much going on, and it's just trying to get that to slow down. And then when my last guest Danny mentioned as well, as soon as you can get that to slow down, then things come clearer. But it's so easy. I mean, on my last showcase on Sunday when we had ring training, I was in there with Ian, and we had this. It was 3 minutes. Produce something simple. Ian's nice and old school. We came up with something very simple. I get a little bit of heat. He gets the comeback. Nice and easy. As soon as we went in there, and it was the first time I've had it in a showcase, just drew a blank, and it's the worst feeling in the world. And it was only because he accidentally got a rope break that we didn't plan for, because my ring positioning was shoddy to say the least, and he got a rope break. So, and all of a sudden that threw me right off and blank. And as soon as I felt like 8 Mile just all of a sudden choked. Luckily we managed to save it. But there it is. You're right. There's so much stuff going on in your head, and it's just trying to slow that down and relax and let that resonate in your work and wrestling as well. So
it's easier said than done, though, isn't it? Just go. Very easy for someone to say, just go out there and relax. But 100%. And something else I realised in my first ever match. I mean, obviously, I was absolutely bricking it. I was very lucky enough to have kind of members of my family, my girlfriend, and members of her family in the crowd all kind of supporting me. So that softened the blow somewhat and made it a little bit easier. But I remember
I see that as more pressure. I see that as more pressure.
A little bit,
I can have
I find that I'm a lot more relaxed when they're not there, because I don't know. It's like, because if I put it this way, if we're working a show in Gravesend like we did, I didn't have anybody there to support me, just because it was a bit out of the way and they were planned. So I was a lot more relaxed for that match, because I felt like, well, look, if I make a tit of myself here and I really screw up, I'm probably not going to see any of these people again. Whereas
it's all part of learning,
exactly. And I took it as that. Whereas obviously, if I've got people to support and then you end up, I don't know, slipping off the top rope or something, then they won't take the piss, but they'll remember it. But I remember my first match, my concept of time just went out the window. So I mean, I remember coming to the ring and standing on on the ring apron, and I think I did, before I actually stepped foot in the ring and before I got up onto the turnbuckle and posed to the crowd, I looked out to the crowd and kind of gave them a little nod, then got back in the ring, stood on the turnbuckle, kind of outstretched my arms for a little bit. Now in my head, to me, it felt like the time between me getting in the ring and getting down from the turnbuckle was about 10 seconds. And then when I watched it back, I was like maybe I was on the ring apron for about a second. Like the nod was like in fast forward, got in the ring, quickly got up, quickly outstretched my arms and then got down. And I'm like, that wasn't even 3 seconds. Like, mental. So it is, I think, when you watch people kind of at a more advanced level, you do see that very rarely, even the guys working the fast-paced, kind of cruiserweight style, there's I've heard the saying before of going fast to look slow, if that makes any sense. But what it basically means is that when they're actually hitting a move, they do it fast-paced. But then if you actually look at what they're doing before that, it's actually they're not rushing into anything. They'll kind of take their time picking someone up, getting them ready, and then they'll hit this mad sequence, which will be really fast-paced, and then they bring it back down again. So I think it's easier said than done, though. Like you say, when you get in there, you can. It's like almost revising for a test. You can revise all you like. You can think, I know this, I know exactly what I need to do, and then as soon as you get there, the exam's in front of you, or you're in the ring, your mind just goes, and you're like, I have absolutely no idea what I'm doing now, and then you just kind of go on instinct, and it isn't until afterwards where and you probably know this because you obviously you record your showcases. The same with matches, and then I watch them back and I think, I could have You know, I could have actually posed a little bit there, or taken a little bit longer, or I could have, you know, kind of mouthed off there a little bit, or I didn't say anything there and I could have. And, you know, it's all coulda, shoulda, woulda. But again, this is part of the learning process. And that's why I think it's actually good that you record even your showcases, because, you know, you can, even if you completely butcher, you know, your own performance, you know, you're going to learn from it. And I think that's important. It's just kind of trial and error. Unfortunately, you know, kind of going out, getting it wrong. And then once you get something wrong once, you don't want to get it wrong again. So you kind of make sure that you get it spot on next time. Yeah,
definitely. That's why I try to film everybody else's stuff as well. I mean, even yesterday, I did those forearms in the session. I thought, I'm really good at strikes. I'm really good. I'm loving all these strikes. This is brilliant. I'm laying them on hard. They're brilliant. Watched it back. I might as well have thrown a paper bag at him rather than a forearm. And he looked absolutely incredible. And I was like, this is my video.
But Mayhew, that's because Mayhew is incredible.
He is incredible. He is incredible. Workers. He didn't sell my forearm clubs though, or I don't know whether my forearm clubs didn't look that good. But Mayhew, I'm calling you out. Here. But yeah, it's true. You need to kind of it's all part of learning. That's why I put the videos out. I know they look shit, and I hope people will see my progression over time. That's why I always put the ones where I look like a heap of shit out there, because eventually, hopefully, they'll look good so people can see that I am actually progressing as well. So
this is what, and I think that's good, because like I mean, unless you do it for yourself, I don't think people they appreciate just how much like you do need to think about. And I say it's very easy to make look shit, but it's very difficult to make look good. So you know, even when I think I even have a greater appreciation for, you know, the guys in WWE that, you know, and don't get me wrong, there are guys there that, you know, generally if you ask a casual fan what do you think of, I don't know, like Kurt Hawkins for instance, the generic response is shit. But if you actually look at it, he's not. He's far from shit. He's, you know, he's got the basics down. He does the right things at the right time. You know, whatever. So I think that since starting, I've got such a greater appreciation for it. And just watching other people and how they do things. In fairness, I think at times is probably the best way to train. At least kind of your mind as well, because I can't remember who it was now. I think it may have even been Luke at training. He met with. Definitely Christian, maybe possibly Edge as well, at like a Comic-Con convention, something like that. And the bit of advice that Christian gave to him, which he then passed on to us, which I thought was quite solid advice, was obviously watch as much wrestling as you can, but pick 2 to 3 guys or girls that inspire you, or you know want a similar style to, or just you like the style of, and just watch them constantly. Like, you know, just literally pick 3 people or however many you want, and just watch them and what they do, how they do it, when they do it. And I mean, that's something that wasn't advice that I got given directly, but you know, when Luke said it, I thought that's actually really good. And since then, I have, you know, kind of picked a couple of people that I enjoy watching, or I think, you know, do a good job of it, and just study as much as possible. And I think that's the best way to be. I think that's the best way to look at it.
Solid advice, man. So you've led on to the next question very nicely. Yeah, great little segue, Danny.
Yes, mate.
Who are the 3 people, or 1 or 2? Who are you keeping your eye on?
So AJ Styles has got to be one. He's been a favourite since you know, day one in TNA. I remember, I think these are back in the old tape trading days. I don't know if you ever got involved in that. So before everything was so regularly available and easily attainable online.
On VHS,
On VHS. This is going back. There was the only way to get hold of your likes of, you know, kind of your Ring of Honors, your CZWs at the time. And it, you know, kind of TNA when they first started out was by you know, kind of tape trading, or buying people that would somehow get access, record them, and then kind of sell them on for a tidy profit. So AJ was someone that I remember was pushed from the off in TNA. They really built him up as this new, innovative up and comer. I've loved him since day one. So he's someone who I actually felt proud when he made it to WWE, because I felt like I've kind of been there. I even remember watching him in WCW. I don't know if people are actually aware that he started off in WCW just before they folded. Yeah, so I think he was in a tag team I think their names were Air Paris. So his tag partner, his surname was Paris or Paris something, and obviously he was still AJ Styles. He was only a young guy, maybe 20, 21, if around that age. But this was right before they folded. So he's definitely one guy. I think from a technical point of view, are you familiar with a guy called Christopher Daniels?
Yeah, Christopher Daniels. Yeah, the bald guy used to be in TNA.
Yeah, so I mean, he's done it all. I think he was, he's done Ring of Honor, TNA. He's now in Ring of Honor, but one of AJ's good mates in real life. But he's someone who is widely respected in the business. He's technically, one of the best. I mean, I think unfortunately for him, he peaked at the wrong time. If he was maybe just starting off, or maybe a bit younger now, when WWE and obviously you have NXT where they're a bit more open to considering smaller guys, he 100% he'd be in NXT right now, 100%. But he's another guy who just technically is he's spot on in everything he does. He's always got entertaining matches. He's repackaged himself numerous times. He's a very entertaining guy, very good performer. And another guy that I don't know why. It's not a guy that I particularly actually. I wouldn't even consider him to be one of my favourites, but I've always been drawn to another guy called Davey Richards. So he, I think, started off with PWG. May have been trained by some of the guys down there. Worked Ring of Honor for a while. More recently, he's been in TNA as well. I think he's taken himself away from pro wrestling. So I actually think he's become a doctor, or he's training to be a doctor. But regardless, I think he's a guy that is kind of similar height to myself. I think he's a bit of a smaller guy, maybe kind of 5'7", 5'8". Quite a stocky guy, but just very, very aggressive. He's the type of guy that you forget his size when he's in the ring, because he's quite hard hitting, or makes it look hard hitting at least. Maybe has that kind of strong style, but yeah, just everything he does looks. When he first started out initially, he kind of softened up the more experience he got. But when he first started off in PWG, he would just batter the hell out of people, and it just looked amazing. And he looked very intense in everything that he did. But yeah, I mean, I suppose that the guys that I like aren't necessarily the bigger characters, or necessarily the best talkers, but they're just technically very, everything they do looks very fluid. And I also think, bar AJ, because he's just incredible, I think these are all three guys that have move sets that I think are either similar-ish, or to me, what I want, or the type of style that I would like to do. So, for instance, one of my favourites at the moment is Ricochet, or Prince Puma in Lucha Underground. But even someone like Will Ospreay, I mean, great. I'd love to watch them all day, but realistically, I'm not going to be able to do the type of things that they do. So it's not worth me, studying them. Whereas the guys that I've picked are all kind of have styles that I feel appeal to me. They're exciting, but they're don't require you to be an expert in gymnastics to be able to do some of the stuff that they do. So let me turn the tables on you for a second. So if you had to pick three guys that you had to study, or who would your three be?
All right, first one straight away, and it's just, I've always had a soft spot, and it's just straight up, it's Drew McIntyre. It was as soon as he debuted on SmackDown, I was honestly, there's something about him. I don't know what it is. And his Future Shock DDT, that double arm underhook DDT, and I just liked it, the whole Chosen One thing, and I think it helps that he's British. There is a majority of my family are actually Scottish. I'm not just kind of I'm not trying to cling on to a Scottish Scottish bloodline, but I am the only English person in my family, so I am 85% Scottish, although I am English born. But so I think that resonated with me. So he's definitely one of the main ones. I don't like his new Claymore kick, whatever the hell that is. I'm not a fan of that.
Yeah, I think he was always going to struggle with the DDT because Dirty Deeds is quite similar.
Yeah.
I think that Ambrose, you've got using that. But yeah, I mean, it works. He's a big guy, but I just because he's a bigger guy, because he's deceptively. I mean, he's what 6'5" maybe. I mean, he seems to. A lot of people seem dwarfed by him whenever they're up against him. I think. I don't know. I feel like he should have maybe a bit more of a power move, but at the same time, if a guy like that is kicking you in the face, I don't think you're getting up higher. Let's be honest.
In terms of the other two, you've really put me on the spot now. I'm trying to think. My one's a cliche though. Like a lot of, I like the kind of sharpness and electricity of what The Rock had. I know everyone's. The thing is with me, I was a fan of The Rock before he became Dwayne Johnson. Now everyone loves The Rock.
Yeah.
But I liked The Rock back when he was Rocky Sucks 1998. It was just that he had that kind of, I don't know, that extra kind of sharpness and he can make a move just look electric, just with these little movements and stuff like that. I like that about it. In my head, I feel like I try to do that. I just don't think I do it very well. But there's definitely one person who I kind of know all his movesets in and out, so I can't help but naturally do that, like boots or something. Like in a way, I kind of feel like shaking my boot before stomping on someone, the same way The Rock done. The third one that I'd always keep an eye on is just HBK, just because he's. I think it's more the showman stuff. Apart from Drew McIntyre, I'm very much I like the showmanship of it all.
I think probably the best of all time. I mean,
definitely, yeah.
I don't know. I mean, it's if you ask me tomorrow, it'll probably change. I'll probably say someone like Kurt Angle, but I mean, he's top three easy. I mean, and again, he's another example of someone of a similar height. I mean, he's not the biggest guy. I still think he's like 6'1" maybe, but obviously back in those days that was considered quite small in WWE. And I mean, I think you ask most guys that are wrestling now, even the kind of the guys like Ricochet and Will Ospreay, who they grew up liking, guarantee they would all say Shawn Michaels. I think that's a safe bet there, mate.
Yeah, and the only other one I've tried to keep an eye on is Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. I know I never used to watch him a lot. I didn't really watch anything pre 1990s or anything, but I started to watch him now only because of Babyface. I want to try to, although I'd ideally want to be a heel, he is such a good babyface that and Tamira's quite good at it as well. I've noticed that she just looks like she's about to die there in the ring, and I just think that. And it just gets the crowd wanting to get behind you because you just literally look like you've got nothing left. And Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, I've been keeping an eye on him just for that babyface sympathy. But
that in itself, people, historically have gotten over for just being able to take a beating. So I mean, I remember when I first started watching ECW back. Do you ever remember a shop being MVC?
Yeah.
So I mean, they used to be like
music
the only
video
shop.
CDs.
That's it. Yeah, they used to be like the only shop in Romford that used to sell wrestling tapes. And I remember going in and seeing ECW. Unfortunately, they'd already closed down by this point. Just my luck. But I remember they had a couple of ECW like 2000, 2001 shows, and I remember being so excited because I hadn't seen it all before. I'd heard all the buzz about this ECW. I'd never seen it, and one of the guys that stood out to me on one of the first shows I watched was a guy called Mikey Whipwreck. Now, the older I got, and the more the internet kind of blew up, and there was more information to be got, I actually found out that when he first started, he was essentially just like King Jobber. But he got over with the crowd. All he basically would do was go out, take an absolute pasting, and always lose, but he looked so sympathetic all the time that I think Paul Heyman cottoned on to the fact that these guys love this kid. It's gone past the point where they want to see him get the shit out of him. They're actually rooting him on. And then I think out of nowhere, so they had him going this massive losing spree. And then I can't remember who against, but out of nowhere, after not winning a match for a year, he won a match just via a roll-up. And the place went absolutely ballistic. Like, I remember watch. It may have even been one of those kind of the rise and fall of ECW, type things. But I remember them speaking about it, and it was back in the old ECW arena, and they mentioned that we literally all we did was have this guy lose and get the shit beat out of him. But he was so good at getting beaten up that it actually he became one of the most over guys on the show. So almost not too dissimilar to what happened with James Ellsworth quite recently, that he got over because he had no chin and he just got beaten up a lot. So I think like you say, it's there's an art form in selling and actually convincing people you're on the verge of death, because if they're convinced you're dead or on the verge of death, or you can't stand, but then out of nowhere you're making this comeback. I mean, that's ultimately what you want, isn't it? People just think you're done, but then no, you're not done. You've still got some fight left in you, and then that's the point where, in theory, people should then be going nuts. But I mean, definitely someone like that, and that's what I mean. Everyone, you can learn something from everyone. So, like on your list, you've got Drew McIntyre is a guy who's very, very solid technically as well. You've got HBK you can watch for the showmanship. Ricky the Dragon Steamboat on the art of selling. So you can learn so much just from picking, which has actually made me think maybe I should kind of branch out on my three, because they're all quite similar. Whereas you've kind of got a bit of a variety there.
Well, you called me on the spot. I just googled the top three. Those are the first ones I chose. No. Those are my actual three. But I mean, just changing the subject a little bit, Danny. One other thing I've noticed, I think you mentioned it in the past, was that you dropped a lot of weight to get into ring shape. Is that right?
Yeah.
I mean, I've tried to do that myself as well. But I mean, what type of things have you changed about your lifestyle to try and help you in wrestling? Yeah,
so this kind of ties in, I suppose, with the confidence thing that I spoke about earlier. So kind of growing up, I mean, look, I was never kind of obese, but I was always quite soft and flabby. I played football with my mates and had a kick around, but I wasn't competitive. I wasn't in shape, and my diet was absolutely horrendous. So I'd quite happily plough through kind of 3 bags of crisps after dinner a night and not think anything of it. So generally I was in terrible condition, and that does, I think, play on your confidence over time. And in terms of big adjustments, I mean, when I it got even worse when I turned 18 and could go out drinking, and when I was younger, I'm quite happily say that I was probably a bit of a sod. Like most people, you start drinking, you go out to the early hours, kind of get up to all sorts. Was doing kind of all sorts stuff that I won't go into, but things I shouldn't have been doing, basically. So my general health on the outside and inside was probably pretty grim. I mean, I don't really know what changed it. I think that essentially I was just kind of sick of not having any confidence. I think something obviously clicked in my head, and I realised that kind of on a serious level, I wasn't happy with kind of where I was in life, and that for personal reasons or whatnot, I just wasn't happy with my current situation. I didn't like the way I looked. It made me unconfident. That translates into so much more. Even kind of when interviewing for a job. If you're not confident, that comes across. And I do recruitment, or I did sales at the time, and the first thing they look for is confidence. So I tried several times to kind of get a routine going with the gym and dieting, and I was too engrossed, I was more concerned about being one of the boys and going on all day sessions, getting up at 10 o'clock, going for a full English, putting a load of bets on, drinking from, watching the early kickoff, and then drinking all throughout the day, and most of the afternoon, most of the evening, then going out afterwards, and then, kind of getting a takeaway, and, it just something clicked, and I don't know necessarily what brought it on or what the final deal was, but I luckily, and thankfully managed to actually find a bit of consistency, and I don't know, I think it was, the more you go to the gym, and the longer you stick at it, consistency is key. And I think that once I started getting, once I got that first compliment from someone that kind of noted that I'd been going to the gym and had lost a bit of weight, and I think that in itself becomes quite addictive. So I think that then kind of spurred me on, because I realised whatever I was doing was working. I just went from there. I mean, the big adjustment was just prioritising, my health, and for anyone that's thinking about that isn't happy, kind of with the way that they look, and on a serious note, it does affect your mental health. And one of the first things, kind of doctors or people say to you if you're unhappy, or you are, kind of feeling slightly depressed or down, that the best remedy for that is to go to the gym and to exercise, because it kind of releases endorphins and, kind of gives you a more pleasant state of mind. And I think that it does become addictive, and then once you start getting those compliments, you just want to keep on going. And then the more it's like wrestling, the more you keep doing it, the more you learn, the more you realise what you've been doing wrong, and kind of where you need to adjust. And I don't know, I mean, that was a big thing for me, and that ultimately was, again, one of the decisions I ended up finally taking that leap, because I think when I was 14 or 15, that may have been one of the reasons that actually prevented me from doing it, because I wasn't in good shape, I wasn't athletic, and I think once I lost a little bit of weight and kind of started to put on a bit of muscle, and started overall looking a bit more just in better shape, I suppose, that I realised that okay, if I go now, I won't completely embarrass or disgrace myself. I felt like at the time I was in fair shape. I think. Yeah. I mean, look, there's still a long way to go, and that's the thing, that I think my mentality's completely changed. I try to refrain from drinking as much as possible. I mean, especially in comparison to what I used to be like. Don't get me wrong, I'm human, so I occasionally have the odd relapse, nights out or special occasions and whatnot, but I try to avoid it as much as possible. I mean, that was a big contributing factor to, kind of me actually going into wrestling and actually sticking with it. And I think that that was an important step for me to take, because I think just mentally as well, you've got to have confidence, and wrestling is about, put it this way, you need to have confidence in order to step out in front of people, and people need to, especially if you're a good guy, they need to invest in you. And if they don't believe you're confident, and they don't believe that you believe in yourself, then it's not going to work.
They're not going to get behind you.
So So long answer, short. I just basically just in short just cleaned up my diet, sorted myself out, and stuck with the gym. Now, for anyone looking to go to the gym, look, you're not the same with wrestling. It's not going to happen overnight, and people need to realise that. And I think that's what I needed to realise as well. I was maybe going 3 times a week, and after 4 weeks I'm like, where's my six pack? Doesn't work like that. Do you know what I mean? You need to there's a lot of you need to take into consideration. You just need to stick with it. You need to research. The same in wrestling. You need to kind of research and study. It's the same with fitness. You've got to look into different programs, diets, kind of when to eat, what to eat. There's a lot to it. So and luckily the two go hand in hand. So I think anyway, there's a lot of, you don't have to be in the best shape to be a wrestler, but it obviously helps if you do. But yeah, I mean, for anyone, I suppose, debating, maybe some of the younger guys who maybe aren't old enough to join a gym yet, or are thinking about, improving their physique and going to the gym, do it. And trust me, like, again, the same with wrestling. My only regret is that I didn't do it sooner. I really wish that I would have joined a gym and actually stuck with it when I was, kind of 19, 20, however old. And I wish that that's the route that I would have gone down rather than the one that I did, because I think whilst I'm doing it now, unfortunately, as you were so kind to point out earlier, I'm getting on a little bit now. It's my last year in my 20s. So, unlike, don't get me wrong, and I'll get jealous. I see some of the guys at training who, and I'll use, Aidan Taylor as an example. He's still a young guy. Do you know what I mean? He's got more experience than me already, but he's got so much time. His time is on his side, and all he basically needs to do is make a few adjustments. So he knows that, himself, he needs to get himself down the gym a little bit more and put on a little bit of muscle, define himself a little bit more. And honestly, he could go a long way. He's got the right attitude. He wants it. As much as I may want it, not making excuses, but obviously I do have restrictions, and I'm quite realistic with myself. I think there is only so far that I can go at this age. I'm certainly not expecting to pack in my full-time job and pursue the dream of ending up in NXT or WWE or anything. But just if you're thinking about it, do it, and trust me, you won't regret it.
Yeah, and I've got to give a little shout out to Aidan. He's getting bigger. He's getting a lot more toned than he was the first time I met him.
Listening to me, that's why.
Whatever he's doing, it's working. So obviously listening to you, so no bother. So all right, well, boom, there it is. So Danny, it's fan time.
Yes.
And I tell you what, I feel like I want to introduce a little jingle at this bit.
Okay.
And boom, there it is. See, Danny, you wouldn't have heard that. You probably just got white noise, but there was a jingle there for the listeners.
I'm actually excited to hear this jingle now.
So, you know what? I haven't even got the jingle yet, but the listeners, and if you're listening now,
really you can't find one now. Just like, here's the jingle. I can't.
You've just had your heads blown. All right, this jingle was the best jingle you ever heard. So, now, Danny, quick fire. What's your favourite ever theme song?
I'll stick with WWE. Stone Cold. As soon as the glass hits, you knew it was him. You knew shit was about to go down. So it's got to be Stone Cold.
Good stuff. What's the worst ever theme song you ever heard?
Oh, there are
We're going quick fire, Danny. We're going quick fire. I'm calling spots.
Oh mate, you've fucked me here. Worse. It's got to be something generic, isn't it?
I've got mine. I already had this.
Well, whose is yours? It gives me a bit of time
to censor.
One now.
It was brilliant, but the worst fucking thing was Right to Censor.
See, it serves its purpose. So it hit, and the whole point was that, fucking hell, not this lot again, and it worked. All right, okay.
Did work,
so. Outside of WWE, one of my favourite tag teams in TNA were the Motor City Machine Guns, and there was a period of time they had this wicked entrance music, and then just out of nowhere they changed it. It was maybe their second theme, and I mean I don't advise that you track it down, but it was just so anticlimactic. They were a high energy team, very innovative, very worked so well together. Two good looking guys in great shape, cool gimmick. And then their music was just like a wet fart, and it was like, nah. I think to the point where when they eventually did change it, they actually had the two come out and say, we know our entrance music was shit, we've got a new song, it's so much better. So probably Motor City Machine Gun's second theme, that's the one that stands out.
Oh, nice. Let's see, look, I'm just trying to... Hold up. Was it this?
That was the one they changed it to, so that was the one they made a big deal about.
This is the one you say shit?
No, that was a good one. It was one before that. It was just, it was terrible. But that was the one they changed it to, and they were like, we're sorry, this is the new one.
Is this it?
Yeah, yes. I mean, really. It doesn't make you think, oh, mate, these are two cool guys that are gonna do loads of flips and cool moves. It was just like, what the fuck is this?
Okay, listeners, I'm gonna end this podcast show with that theme song. Very first. Okay, if you could have one program with any wrestler in the world today leading into a WrestleMania match, who would it be?
For me to go up against?
Yeah.
Oh, got to be AJ, because I'm convinced he could drag a good match out of anyone. So, I mean, he could at least make me look competent. It's got to be AJ.
Fair enough. I like the honesty. I love the honesty, I've got to say. Favourite ever wrestling move? Last one. It could be a signature, it could be a finisher, it could be a standard move.
It's got to be something from the top rope. I think the first time I ever saw, again, AJ Styles, he hasn't done it in WWE yet, but I know that Tyler Bate has done a version. It was a top rope move called the Spiral Tap, which is... it's basically like a corkscrew swanton, I suppose, like because it's a front flip and then he corkscrews. But I remember the first time I saw that, I was like, what? Like my mind was blown. Or actually, another great one. You'll never see it in WWE because Vince would just have a heart attack. But there's a move called the Vertebraker that Shane Helms used to use in WCW, and a guy called Homicide still does use in TNA and Ring of Honor. I don't even know how you would describe it, but it
sounds horrible.
It's one of those moves that nobody should ever kick out of, because, and I don't think anyone ever has, just because it looks like the Canadian Destroyer. Like when you take it, it's like you're dead. There's no way you're kicking out of that. So that was, there are some finishers, people hit them, you're like, nah, a bit anticlimactic. That when that's hit, it's like this is over. There's no way anyone's kicking out of that.
Okay, no, good. Well, you answered them very quickly. It was good, quick fire. What can bookers, promoters, or fans expect from the Romford rock and roller Danny Rowe when he comes through the curtain?
So, essentially, the motto that my character and myself kind of lives by is, as you've mentioned earlier, style over substance, and I think that is the route that I think that I want to take. Basically, I'm going to go out, I'm going to hit a bunch of moves that look good. My character's not necessarily concerned whether he wins or loses, as long as everything looks good and he looks good doing it. Quite hard hitting. I don't mind laying it in. I don't mind taking it. In terms of being hit, for the record, I don't really like that. Hard hitting. Flashy moves. Air of arrogance, but that's kind of I'm not one to pander to the crowd in the sense of kind of getting people to clap along and geeing them up by saying come on. I'm kind of a take me as I am. You either love me or you hate me. If you love me, cool. If you don't like me, you want to cheer for the other guy, cool. It doesn't bother me. I'm there. I'm going to do my thing. And make it look good, and that's essentially, I think, where I'm at with the character at the moment. But still work to be done.
Oh, good stuff. So, how can the listeners keep up with you? You got social medias? You got Instagrams?
I do, and I can't remember what my bloody handles are on any of them.
I'll put them all in the podcast description.
I am on Twitter. I am on Instagram. I can't remember my handles. It will be Danny Rowe 88 in some format, or Danny J Rowe 88, because I was born in 88, and obviously Danny Rowe is my name. Keep up with me there. I'm more active on Twitter with regards to wrestling than I am on Instagram.
Yeah.
But any time I'm on a show or booked, Facebook as well, feel free to become my friend. I need more of them. I'm just under Danny Rowe on Facebook, and that's probably the best way to keep up to date with the life of Danny.
And are there any parting words for people? Any shout outs?
So right, I'm going to have to mention Bromance Mitch Davis, because he's been very needy today. I've been celebrating my kind of almost 1 year anniversary with Dropkicks and wrestling in general on Facebook, and he was very sad that I didn't specifically mention him by name. So I'm going to shout out to him. I just
want to say, Mitch, I'm sorry. I've borrowed him for a little while. Yeah, you can have him back.
I actually think he has messaged me since we've been on here as well.
I've had nothing but hate messages from him for the past hour. So.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me. He's very protective over me. Obviously, there's some good lads in Dropkicks as well, likes of Aidan, Taylor Essex, for kind of getting me from A to B on a lot of occasions. Would be able to make trading without him. Lewis Barrett, the heavyweight / the creep, top lad. Jack Torino, who for my money, controversially, I'm going to say, is the best worker in Dropkicks at the moment. Sorry, Aidan. But he's ridiculous. He joined a week after me, and just to see how, if ever there is someone you can look at and say he's a natural, it's Jack Torino. Yeah, it's just 100%. It makes me sick. it really upsets me how just good he makes everything look, and just how quickly he takes to it. I suppose they're the main boys for now. There's obviously more, but they all got their individual mentions on Facebook earlier, so I'm not going to fuel any more egos. And I don't really know who else is going to listen, but I'll shout out to my girlfriend as well, because I'm going to make her listen to this, just for generally being supportive. She's been to the majority of shows, and she brings her crazy but lovable family along. They're very supportive of my journey in wrestling. I've got behind me the whole way. They've come to multiple shows. Always interested to see how I'm getting on. So and it really helps, like, knowing that they're there supporting me on, and they're there to see me. Kind of really helps. And I think that'll do for now. And also, I should probably say to Lucas Jackson for actually kind of giving me my break in wrestling, and actually putting me on shows. Unfortunately, he did get pipped to the post by EAW in terms of giving me my debut, but Dropkicks for the for the most part has been my home, and is my home. I think that'll do for now. I'm not gonna be nice to too many other people, because otherwise people might start thinking that I'm actually a nice guy, and really I'm not. I'm a dick.
Well, I mean, Danny, it's been a pleasure. Very raw, very honest, but hey, I like it. It shows you're a genuine guy, and listeners, it's definitely worthwhile keeping an eye on this guy. A lot of promise, and he naturally picks up on things quite well. So, thanks again, Danny. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
No bother at all. And so, guys and girls, that is it from this week. We've made it through the 13th episode. No technical cock-ups. We made it all the way through the other side. So thank you for following my journey, listening to this show, and I look forward to wrestling a match with you all soon. And I'll speak to you all next week. Thank you again for listening, and people, I need your help. I would love it if you could pop over to iTunes to leave this podcast a review. Your reviews are so important to me. I need to understand what you think of the show, and it helps just raise awareness for everyone else on this show. And not only that, guys, if you have a friend or a relative who you know is an avid wrestling fan, please point them in this podcast's direction.